Meeting of August 20th, 2019 is now open. Let us stand to say this Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So, the first item is the approval of the warrant.
We missed the pledge.
May I have
So moved.
okay, a motion and a second?
Second.
Okay, seeing no discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained?
I abstain.
Chair votes aye. That's 3-0-2, right? How am I doing? Okay. All right, and then the approval of the minutes of July 9th.
So moved?
Second?
Any comments? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Abstain.
Abstain? One,
I'm going
okay.
to abstain also, I missed that meeting.
Okay. So, and the chair votes aye, so that's 3-0-2. The approval of the minutes of July 23rd.
So moved?
Second?
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The chair abstains. I was not there. And we can now move on to any public participation. Yes, please come on up and please make sure that the microphone is on. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Eileen Sickler, town meeting member, precinct 4, hi. So two things. The Powers and Sullivan, it seems like it was just the other day, but it was really January that I asked about an update on the revolving accounts. And I didn't know if there was something that was new with his review.
Okay, I believe we're going to talk about that tonight, or, no, I know what it is. We actually got the report this morning.
Oh, okay.
So, as of tonight, it's going to be sent out, and I'd like to request that it be posted on the school on the school district website. And at our next scheduled school
Perfect.
committee meeting, we will discuss it, and we'd be happy to get people's input. The report was very positive,
Good.
With some, I think, some specific recommendations, but basically, there were no surprises.
Good,
And
okay.
we're moving forward with the timeline that we had suggested and that kind of thing.
Okay,
So,
good. Well, speaking of the website,
Okay.
the bus contract, is there a way we can get that on the website as well?
The whole contract?
It's a PDF, right? But
How do we have that? You want to speak to that, Mr. Cunha?
Again, I can just ask for clarification, Ms. Stickler. The contract is actually very short, one page. Do you mean more of the specifications?
the details, yeah.
So that's not what would that be?
That's the bid specs.
The bid specs? So is that what, you want the bid specs
Yes,
posted?
yes. Whatever we're getting for the money, I guess, the services.
All right. Those are both public documents, so.
Oh, okay, all right. That's all I had. Thank you.
All right,
Thank
good.
you.
Thank you. All right, any other public participation? No, okay. So, moving to the next item is subcommittee reports. And yes,
Whether we want to talk about it now or under old business, we did have a meeting at both the Wildwood Park and Francis Wyman School last week with the contractor that the rec department has been using for the last year to care for some of the school fields.
right. So, actually, I'd like to suggest that we have that discussion now.
Okay.
Under subcommittees, and the topic is about how the school department has a policy of using only organic materials on our fields, is my understanding. And the rec department does maintain our fields, and they are looking at changing some of their procedures. So we did meet with them, and if you could.
Yeah,
go
in a
ahead.
nutshell, about a year ago, the rec department retained, it's a company called Tom Irwin and Associates, it's actually a Burlington company, to change the way that they've been caring for the playing fields. They had been using strictly organic material for the last 7 or 8 years, I believe, and hadn't been working that well. And they get quite a few complaints over the course of a season from parents particularly who's watching their children play in the fields. So they hired Tom Irwin last year to treat the Wildwood Park and Simons Park. And the treatment that they uses some, the way he described it was 90+% organic, but there is still 5 to 10% of chemicals used mainly for a weed killing application and a little bit on the fertilizer side. So in any event, they've had pretty good success with that over the course of the year. There's been a noticeable increase, an improvement in the field conditions at Wildwood and Simons Park. So the rec is going to expand their treatments to Rahanis and I believe Regan Field, starting this fall, going into next year. And they expressed an interest at a rec meeting earlier this summer to also include the playing fields at Francis Wyman and behind Memorial School, because those are the two most used school-sited fields. However, we have the policy of only using organic, so I think I brought the thing to the committee a while back. Steve and I were appointed to a subcommittee to meet with them. We did that probably 3 or 4 weeks ago. And as a result of that meeting, we set up a field visit with Brian, and I'm blanking on his last name. Cucillo. And the chair was there, and Mrs. Monaco was there, and I was there. And we had what I thought was a pretty good visit. Bob was there too. Pretty good visit. He showed us a little bit of, told us what they were doing, showed us the results of some of the work at Wildwood. And we went over to Francis Wyman, and he kind of pointed out what he would envision doing over there. So the rec's moving forward with those other with the other parks this year, and the ball's kind of in our court in terms of whether or not we give them permission to expand their new treatment plan onto the school grounds. And we told Brian, I had told him, and Brendan from the rec department earlier, prior to the meeting, that there was some pretty strong feelings on the school side about staying with the organic plan. And so that's kind of where it was going into the meeting. I haven't really talked to anybody about it since then. I chatted with Martha briefly on the way out to the car afterwards. But so I don't know what kind of impression you guys got from him. There's no question in my mind that it improves the condition of the field. I'm still not 100% knowledgeable about the chemicals being used and the effects of that, other than I know the rec department obviously looked into it before they decided to move forward with it, and were comfortable that they weren't creating any health hazards. So those are being used on some of the fields in town as we speak. So I think the next step is for the school committee to decide at some point whether they want to, or whether we want to modify our existing policy to allow this treatment to go forward, or leave this policy in place, in which case they'll continue to treat our fields with just the organic material, and they'll use the new treatment plan on the town-controlled fields. When the thing came up at the rec level, they start their applications usually around the end of August. And so I told them there's no way that we were going to have it resolved from our end by then. So I think realistically, we're looking at, if they want to phase the school fields into it, and we agree to it, we're probably looking at phasing it in the spring. So I don't think anybody was anticipating a vote quickly, but I think it's a discussion that's worth having, and at some point, we can either choose to give it a try or not give it a try, but until we make that decision, they'll just continue to treat our fields the way that they have been.
Mrs. Monaco?
So, when the rec commission went to all organic years ago, I was the rep to the rec, as Tom is now. And I think from talking to the various people involved, I think what happened that kind of doomed the program is that they would run out of materials. Going organic is expensive, and they'd run out of stuff, and they'd prioritize, well, we've only got this left, so let's use it on that field, or, you know, that kind of thing. And so I came away from this meeting that Tom discussed, feeling that no matter what we do, we have to make sure that either through the rec department or through the school department, that the program is funded. And so we need your help to make sure that however we manage this, they don't run out of product, because what has happened is the organic fields look like, well, they look like hell. So Wildwood looks pretty good, and they did use they used their weed killer on it, and they closed it down for I don't know how long, a
2
few
days, he
days
said.
or something, yeah. Personally, I am not in favor of changing our policy. On the other hand, I know that they're not gonna be able to fix that field, short of rototilling it and replanting it, unless they do something to it. So what I was thinking about was that maybe we could make a one-time exception to use the one product, or I guess it's a combination of 3 products, one time, and insist on closing the field then for an entire week, because I don't think 2 or 3 days is enough. And that, I think so far, in order to get Wildwood looking the way it's looking, they really have only used it once. So if we were to allow them, let's say next spring sometime, to use it one time, close the field for a week afterwards, and maintain our policy, you know, make that one-time exception. This person we met with, what was his name?
Brian Fucillo.
Yeah, he was really nice, he was very knowledgeable, and he's really into organics also. But he needs to get rid of the weeds. So if we did that, and then use the organic products from there on, sticking to our original policy, and making sure that it was funded, both the products and the labor needed to apply them, because in order to have organic fields, you have to do certain things. You have to have the right stuff, you have to aerate them, and it's both time and money, and expensive products. So when I left this meeting, my feeling was that maybe this board would make an exception for one time. Like if the rec came to us and said, hey, can we put this stuff on such and such a day? We won't use any more synthetics, any more chemicals, unless we come back to you again for special permission at another time. I think I could probably sell myself that with difficulty, but maybe one time. But personally, I don't want to change our policy.
Just a quick follow-up on the application times, because I think this is important. Their timing is such that they put it on at the end of June, and if they're going to treat it in the fall, it's usually in late August. So the timing would be such that either of those application periods would be when the schools are not in session. So any use of the fields at that point is either from organized sports at night, or, you know, I suppose kids in the neighborhood playing, but there wouldn't be any school-related activities being,
Late August there would be.
Well,
Well, it depends which
actually,
field.
He said August 5th to 12th range, so
Okay.
you know,
Okay.
it would be something people would have to look at.
that was the time frame that they made the first applications at Simons and Wildwood last year.
Right.
And they got such a good result, they didn't have to make a springtime or a June application this year, and they're not planning on doing it in the fall either.
Right.
Because as Christine said, in addition to doing this to get a foothold on the weeds, there's a bunch of other things that they do with the, to
Aerating
make sure,
and
aerating and
overseeding.
overseeding, and all of that took very well. So, I just wanted to make sure people are aware that if it's an application next year, it would be in late June after school will be closed.
And only if we vote to
Right.
allow.
And
Only
only
if
if
we
we vote to allow it, but it's not something that's gonna happen in May when the kids are out there playing in recess, that type of thing.
So I'd like to speak also after, that meeting. And, yeah, another thing is in order to change our policy, we do need 4 votes. That's how our governance is set up on
Even
the
to
school
make an
committee.
exception.
Oh, and to make an exception, okay, to a policy, that would make sense. And this, is all pretty new to me, but what I wanted to communicate is that the rec department and the fellow Brian Fucillo from the Tom Irwin Company are concerned about safe playing surfaces, which is what's difficult about the organic field, that it may look like hell, but the issue isn't what it looks like. The issue is that you get gaps and you get things that kids can trip on and that kind of thing. So that's sort of it's a safety issue as well as the safety of the kids' exposure to these chemicals, which is also, obviously is the biggest concern we have. And and you mentioned what I was going to say about the time periods, which would be June and August. His report was that these kind of applications have a rapid decomposition in the plant within 2 hours or in the soil, and UV light also breaks these things down, and that they typically would close the fields for 2 days. If we felt we needed to do it for a week, that might, make us feel more comfortable about children's exposures. And then after that meeting, which was posted, I spoke with Brendan Egan, who's the director at the rec department, more to find out a little bit more. And the rec department policy is to be as close to 100% organic as possible. So it's not that they're switching over to using chemicals all the time. They are trying to use the least amount needed. And in the meantime, they're not just using chemicals or using organic materials. It is, as Mrs. Monaco just mentioned, a whole lot of labor. So they're training their staff. They are trying to do things that promote the growth of the turf that we want to make it as healthy as we can. So there's a little aerator machine and there's a big aerator machine, and they break up the soil however many inches down, and I learned a lot. It was really interesting. And aerating the soil means that the nutrients can get to the roots, and then when you put the organic fertilizer on, it is going to get to them, and the healthier the turf is that we want, the less the other weeds grow. So then you don't need, just like at Wildwood in particular, which we saw, they have been aerating it. They do this thing called overseeding, so that when there are little holes, the seed of the grass we want grows. They also they also are mowing twice a week, because when you keep the lawns shorter, it means the weeds are less likely to grow and the turf that we want is more likely to grow. They're irrigating a number of these fields, and we do have irrigation at the Francis Wyman fields. So in order to make the most of that, doing all of these, so the organic fields are not just about what you put on it, not just about the fertilizers and the composition of the fertilizers or the herbicides, but it's also all this other labor that they are doing, that they're hiring some contractors who have some of the specialized equipment we don't have. And what Brendan said is in the long term, he's hoping that he would then be able to get some of this equipment and they'd be able to do it in-house, again, depending on if they had the labor. I mean, it is costly in labor time, and the materials themselves are more expensive to use the organic. So I agree with what you said, Ms. Monaco, that we do need to make sure it's funded properly. And then, so the idea, I was pretty convinced, although I'm not decided what I want to do, and I really like your suggestion of possibly doing a one-time exception, because I saw after one application last year how Wildwood is doing, and all of the labor stuff they're doing, Wildwood is in good shape. So if we help the organic turf do better sooner, then the aeration and stuff will work later, and we won't need to keep using herbicides. And they were very specific about their specific herbicides for specific weeds or broadleaf or goosegrass or crabgrass. You know, they had specific things. And another thing that Brian Fucillo mentioned is that if we have to do these repeated aerations to do more and more of the organic labor with the tractors that run across the fields, there's a lot more of our carbon footprint, a lot more CO2 emissions going into the air. And so if we're looking at what's the healthiest thing for our children, all of these issues are very complicated, but it's another piece that really struck me as if we can put some chemical stuff, herbicide in 1 year, make sure the fields are closed until that material has been absorbed by the plants, and can do less tractor work and, you know, do those other things. To me, I'm looking at it as a possibly good trade-off. And then I went, I went online to look at some of the chemicals that they said they would, you know, have used that are in the lesser dangerous categories that the EPA has. They have 4 categories. They've only used herbicides at Wildwood in the 2 least dangerous categories. And I didn't understand what I was reading. So again, I mean, we may be able to find out more if, you know, we need to. But I'm pretty much in favor of what Mrs. Monaco suggested, where we wouldn't change our policy, but we might make an exception. And as you said at the meeting, that, you know, if a year later they wanted to do a spot thing for one particular field that had one particular herb that was weed that was growing, we'd have to make that an exception again if we chose to. And then the last thing I wanted to mention is that this would not be put on all the fields. This would be just put on the playing fields. So it wouldn't be like the lawn in front of Francis Wyman and all those other places, but only on the playing fields. I wanted to sort of give that background that I learned this week and support the idea that Mrs. Monaco has put out.
And just to follow up on only in the playing fields, they only do it on playing fields with irrigation in them. So
That's right.
So on the schools, right now, the only ones they're looking for is the playing field behind Francis Wyman and the soccer field up behind Memorial School that has irrigation as well. So
Okay.
any school, even if it has playing fields on it, but they don't have irrigation, they wouldn't be looking to expand it there.
Okay, good. So, is there someone else who'd like to make a comment to that? Yes, Mrs. Russo.
So I, again, apologize, I wasn't there, and just having got back, I haven't had a chance to pull the data on the different chemicals that were presented. I do appreciate the email that was sent out. But again, I haven't read it in the depth
Yes.
that I'd like to, so. Everything that Ms. Simon mentioned, the overseeding, the aeration, the topsoil, adding all that, I feel like we're in a slippery slope here. Should have been getting done. I need personally more historical information on what's been happening the past couple of years.
That is what they've been doing.
So,
The twice-a-week mowing, the aeration, the irrigation.
so if we just put one application of chemicals, but we still continue doing what they have been doing, then then you're going to be reliant on those chemicals. So either the aeration, the seeding, the topsoil, something isn't working, that's not being done to level. Otherwise, if that's what they have been doing, how is one chemical application going to fix this moving forward? And you might,
So what happened is, the plan that was originally intended for the all organic fields was never fully or properly implemented because they kept running out of product and labor. So it just wasn't done. So the point here is that this guy, Brian, it has developed a new plan. It's a new
Okay.
firm, a new plan. And my insistence with the people from Recreation that were there was that whether we provide funding, some funding, or whether we help them procure the funding, they need enough money so that if they do this one-time application, as they did it at Wildwood, they then have both the labor and the product to do what we wanted done in the first place and keep it up.
okay,
So
and I
that's
guess,
a-
and that's
an
my
important
thing, it
piece of it.
hasn't been
Yes.
done properly, so we're in this predicament.
They kept running out of money.
Okay, so I guess I would like some more historical, and I apologize because I wasn't there, so if maybe I can speak with Brendan
really
at
didn't-
another
I think
point, or,
That'd be good.
We
you
didn't
know,
go into
catch
that
up.
a lot because it's like, I feel like I'm beating them up, saying you didn't really carry the
Implement it.
plan out. And yet it was sort of to be expected. I mean, you have to have people that are trained in what they're doing with a dogged determination to make the fields work organically. Organic fields are very difficult to produce and then maintain. And we have to really go into this with, okay, we're gonna try over. We'll kill these weeds, but then we're doing organics. And if it costs the school department money, so be it.
And following up on that, which I think is more information that we need before we make any decisions, my sense is that they would want us to contribute to the cost somehow, and clearly we don't have that in our budget currently.
Right.
So we'd have to get a handle on what that would be, talk to the superintendent, talk to Bobby about that. And, because that would be an ongoing addition to our operating budget, that we'd have to be going into this understanding that that's gonna have to be there, every year moving forward. So I think we need that number, or at least a realistic approximation of what that number is.
So that's a request of
I think we
Mr.
need a
King?
commitment from them that
Okay.
they'll make it happen
Okay.
if we help provide for it.
And also, I mean, I think what was clear is that after 1 year, and they've been doing this organic stuff for a while, maybe not thoroughly, and there was one application last year, and they didn't need to do it again this year at Wildwood, which is not a school field. And again, that their goal is to use as little as possible, but that if we do it without chemicals and we do that deep aeration and all these other things, it could be 8 years before we get the fields kind of cleared up. Whereas if we use this one-time or application, if we were to agree to it, it might only take 2 years of that intensive labor. Those are approximate numbers, but that's, so it's not, they may not have done it real well originally, but it sounds like since they've hired this new firm, they're really working on doing it correctly. And this is kind of a way to jumpstart it, so that the healthy turf that we want gets a better chance. But did you want to say something else about it, or?
No, I'll take the time, look more into it.
Okay, all right, Mr. Nelson?
Yeah, just a couple of quick comments. I think the committee members have already touched on pretty much everything. When Tom and I met with, with Brian Fratello in the subcommittee meeting, the first subcommittee that we had, that meeting went about an hour and a half, and Brian did emphasize what Ms. Simon was just talking about in terms of ongoing aggressive maintenance of the fields once we go with the organic program. And he didn't give us a number, but Tom and I think, both got the same impression. It's gonna be pretty expensive. So we're gonna have to, I think, get some numbers, get an idea what we're really talking about. Because he was talking about aeration, overseeding, a constant mowing, more than we're doing now, application of organic materials. I didn't get the impression that there are too many good organic weed killers. Most of the organic weed killers kill everything. You can get organic weed killers, but they'll kill the grass and the weeds. So that's why I think the Recreation Department was willing to try the herbicides. That's apparently, it's a spray-on application. They probably have one of those John Deere tractors with the big wings, and they go down the field and they spray it on. And what Brian had indicated at the subcommittee meeting, and you've already mentioned this, Martha, is that it's absorbed into the plant very, very quickly, and it breaks down in the soil within 24 hours. That's why they do 48 hours, I think, when they close down the fields. I don't know if there's any scientific reason to close them down for a week if it's gone in 24 or 48 hours, only because I know, even though there's no school, there's other people that are gonna be using those fields. And sometimes I think we have to balance, what we think of the safety measures of having organic fertilizers versus, as Martha said, the safety measures of having good fields. If the fields are uneven, kids are twisting their ankles and hurting themselves, anything can happen on bad fields. And even when you fall on a bad field, it's not very safe. So I think if we're looking at safety, we have to balance the safety of the kids that are playing on the surface versus the risk to their safety of putting on these applications. So, I'd certainly be in favor of Mrs. Monaco's suggestion, and I'll also be in favor of maybe modifying our policy to allow for 2 applications, one in June and one in August, until such time as the rec department. The rec department, they're the ones that are supposed to be taking care of these fields and maintaining them, not us. We're having an awful lot of conversation tonight about turf, but maybe our policy should be amended to allow for 2 applications until such time as the rec department determines that they don't need them. And if we need to fund the additional cost of the organics, I think we get a number and we make a commitment. Because I think it is a safety issue in terms of playability. One other quick comment, when they first did the Wildwood Park, I was all excited about the park. When they built it, they had a walking path around it, they had a beautiful playground in the front. I was so disappointed with the condition of the field. It was overseeded, and it didn't take, I don't think it took 3 months, and half of it was weeds. And that's what Brian was saying, that it's difficult to control them, and there really aren't any great organics out there. So I'd be willing to do either modify the policy on an interim basis and see how it works, or modify the policy to allow for 2 applications and leaving it up to the discretion of the Recreation Department as to whether we only need 1 or we don't need any. Thank you.
Other comments? So in terms of follow-up, I feel like we will discuss it more. We don't need to make a decision right away, but it sounds like we need more information about the chemicals that each of us who feel we need more can find that out from the company or from Brendan. And we also need information about the cost and what it would cost in our operating budget. So who might be the person who could find out that? Thank you, Mr. Cuno. Okay,
Good answer.
thank you. All right, and do you have a comment that you'd like to make? Thank you.
I'd actually like more of a commitment from the Recreation Department to find out, adding it into the school operational budget, that just doesn't seem the right thing to do. If they were responsible for allocating organic chemicals and they weren't able to fulfill it, then I think that they should have come to Ways and Means. And I'm looking for a commitment from the rec department. So, Bob, I'd like you to actually reach out to them, and they need to give us more details, because if they're responsible for keeping these fields fields and everything in order, then they should have been coming to us for more money.
Good. Okay. All right, yes, Mr.
Just to respond to that, Diane, and in fairness to Brendan, he hasn't specifically asked us to contribute to it.
We all could,
I think we understand that the program is going to require more material and potentially more labor. And by that, I mean, they might have to hire another body or something. And so clearly, the expenses will go up. And he hasn't asked us to contribute, but I think that'll be part of the discussion moving forward. If we said, no, we're not going to make an exception to our policy, then the rest of it's irrelevant. So we haven't had that discussion with, but I just don't want to, they haven't officially asked us yet, so that'll be part of the discussion
And
moving
I
forward.
appreciate that, but if they're responsible for it, and, you know, the policy is organic, to throw chemicals on at this point, and now you're going through how many more years to get it back to have organic fields, I just think that we need to have more of a commitment at this point.
Yeah, no, I agree, and that's,
And whether the funding comes through you being generous, that's fine, but we need to have a
Yeah.
discussion at Ways and Means about this, I think, as well.
it was in their budget, well, I'm not sure they have a specific line item for it, but their maintenance budget included the program at Wildwood and Simons that started last year. So it's been in their operating budget for a year now, or this plan has been in there for a year now. I'm not aware that there was any specific discussion, or they didn't come and ask for more money for that, they just reallocated their resources accordingly. But I think as they add fields, which they're gonna be doing Rohannes and Regan to the list starting this year. And then if they add schools to that, I assume at some point it's going to become difficult for them to cover it unless they either get some more money or stop doing something else. So I think it's a discussion that's gonna be had, but you're right, there's no sense in anybody putting the resources into it unless we don't have the commitment to stick with it.
Yeah, I mean, if we can't afford to do organics, then they need to really figure something out. But adding chemicals on top and doing it
Yeah.
one time, the chemicals are still gonna be there regardless.
Yeah.
I think we know that. Thank you.
Mrs. Monaco?
I just wondered if you know off the top of your head who the subcommittee is for rec on Ways and Means?
Just changed.
You can let me know.
We'll have to look into it.
Yeah, sure.
It just changed.
Thank you.
We'll figure it out.
Okay, any further discussion for tonight? Okay,
Could I make a
Yes.
suggestion, maybe we put it on the agenda, maybe a couple meetings out, give
Okay.
everybody some time to digest and
Yep.
get whatever information they need, and then then it'll be an agenda item to discuss
maybe in
somewhere down.
October?
Yeah.
Okay, can you
Good
keep
idea.
track of that for us, Sharon, please? Thank you. All right, any other subcommittee reports? No. Ways and Means, any report?
Not tonight.
Okay, thank you. So now, under instruction and technology, who would like to speak?
Madam Chair, I will start. We have a bunch of organic kids showing up in a couple weeks. So I just wanted to give the school committee a snapshot of where we are. Remember, we're enrolling kids all the time through August and even into September. We enrolled students today that aren't even reflected in these numbers, but I just want to say we're sort of giving you the latest and greatest. So in your packet, you had a sort of a district view that gave you the sort of total number of students per grade, per school, out of district, preschool, and you saw those numbers. And then I wanted to break that down more granularly. I did send you the sort of the worksheet that I use, Mr. Eiler, so you have your computer open, so I sent it to you. I think I have an extra here. I look at it a little bit differently. Okay, so I use the same chart all the time. Mr. Simon pointed out that my heading says 2016, 2017, and I just didn't update the 2019, 2020. I do year-to-year comparisons and use the same chart, so I apologize. I will make that edit change. Again, I look at things a little bit more granularly, so you can see the number of sections per grade per school. We had some parents come in sort of worried about some class sizes, so I just wanted to, I'm tracking that fairly carefully. Again, I think none of this is a surprise. We're always concerned about the number of late registrations, especially in kindergarten, because they are not known. We really look to stress class sizes K2 if we're going to stress class sizes, so I think you can see that. But grade 3 Fox Hill, grade 3 Francis Wyman, grade 2 Pine Glen aren't really surprises to anybody. And I know we're just starting, and not to get too far ahead, and I know not to panic people, but looking ahead to fiscal '21, I apologize, but just the way my brain works. When we lose 2 sections at Pine Glen, we're going to need a third fifth grade teacher. So again, in my head, we have 96 elementary homeroom teachers essentially, and we're probably going to need 97 in fiscal '21, just because we're going to grow that smaller class out. So again, I don't want to give anyone nightmares about fiscal '21. I'm just sort of a bit of a preview, but this is where we're starting today. I'll give another update in September, just because we'll continue to register kids moving forward. And I'll also remind everyone that even if we were to have 2 or 3 teachers, elementary teachers added, we don't have any more classrooms to put teachers in, so we're sort of a landlocked elementary school at this point. So we have roughly 16 classrooms per grade. We can sometimes find extra space or move some specialists, onto a cart or something, but I know that's also not an ideal option, but that's kind of where we are. So it's not just about adding teachers. So even in the Pine Glen situation, we'll find a classroom, and we had to add a 4th developmental skills classroom, and part of the reason we could do it this year without too much trouble is we didn't need the 3rd fifth grade classroom. So next year, if we need the 3rd fifth grade classroom and the 4th developmental skills classroom, we're going to have to make some changes. So again, I hate getting too far ahead, but that's kind of what I'm looking at. Overall, again, you have the bigger picture. The high school sits right around, again, 938. We have about 114 kids in the preschool. That population is growing. You can see the relative school size. I'm going to keep stressing that we always think of Memorial as being larger than Fox Hill, but in reality, it's not. So we did add a second guidance counselor at Fox Hill, and that brings Fox Hill in line with Memorial. Memorial still has a math specialist, and Fox Hill does not. So again, I'm just not previewing fiscal '21, but just kind of giving some relative size to what's there. And we get enrollment monthly. So again, we can include the enrollments. Again, the 10,000-foot enrollments we can include. And then October 1st is when we turn in all of our enrollments, and that's what drives our chapter. Our state funding would be based on that number on October 1. So
does this colored chart include our kindergarten registrations as of today?
Yep.
Okay.
No, well, I think before today. I
As
think
of yesterday,
yeah, I
okay.
think whenever
That's fine.
whenever Robin ran this, it wasn't today,
Okay.
so I
Thank
was
you.
working on it today.
And I understand we've had a number of kindergarten enrollments at Francis Wyman that were not previously known about
Yes.
in the last couple of weeks or something.
Yeah, we always do. Francis
Yeah.
Wyman is so, I think sometimes people look at the ratios when we budget and say, oh, you only have 14 a class at Francis Wyman, but I always know we're gonna get 40 kids registering in August and September. So I think we do that. We did create, this year was our fourth or fifth year, Patrick, of the kindergarten. We do an introduction to the district for kindergarten parents, and we try to register them all at once, district-wide. So the more parents we can pre-register, the better predicting we can do. And we always pick up grade 1 and grade 2 kids, because a lot of parents will enroll their children in a full-time kindergarten program, maybe at Mount Hope, and then have them transfer in as first or second graders. So, but other than that, we stay relatively stable, usually after K2. So again, then it's a straight cohort, move them up, and then predict for staffing. Anyway, so
All right, comments?
any questions, comments?
Okay.
So if
Thank you.
people call about class sizes, you all have the class sizes.
So, new teachers. I was fortunate to meet some of the new teachers today. They had 2 days of orientation, getting to know the system. They have mentors, which is wonderful. A lot of our administrators were here today, so it was great. I don't know if you were going to talk on that, Mr. Larkin?
Yes,
Okay.
thanks for coming today and
Okay.
welcoming them to Burlington. We had a good 2 days with the new staff, with our mentoring coordinator is Diana Marcus, so thanks to Diana for her work the last couple of days. And also Joanne Faust spent some time with the new staff going over some of the human resources aspects that they would need to know in the first day. And good response. People seemed happy. I think we gave them just the right amount of information to get them started. And then today kind of culminated with them hooking up with their mentors here at lunch, and also the building administrators came out to greet them as well. So I think we're about 20, a little bit over 20 with some interim positions and perm subs that are involved, but just about 20 new full-time folks for this year, so we're excited about that.
And I want to thank Sharon and Terry and Dr. Conti's office, because I know every new hire is a whole bunch of paperwork, and they're still coming in this week, and some of it is we had some paraprofessionals who moved into full-time teaching positions, and then we might have a permanent sub who moves in, then we have to hire a new instructional assistant. So it's still a moving
Yeah.
party in the office here, but thank you all for everything that makes it all happen so we can start school next week.
Thanks for saying that. Yeah, I know Sharon and Terry, it's a
Yeah.
scramble during the summer with all the moving parts. And also, I want to thank Rosemary, who did a lot of the coordinating for, to make sure everything ran on time and, behind the scenes. So thanks to Rosemary as well.
Just some additional information, Madam Chair. We had 17 existing positions, existing employees moved to new positions.
Oh,
So we also
okay.
had some movement within the district, because again, when we post a job, we post it internally first, and then we post it externally after that. So you might say we didn't have 23 new teachers in the budget, obviously, but with retirements, with some additions, with people getting other jobs, with people leaving the district, with people moving into new jobs, that sort of creates the space for the new hires that we have. And then from the Ways and Means perspective, which is something that Nicole enacted, I think last year, is we spend the most on personnel, and then what I think the personnel forms, keeping track of all the movement is, I think has made the budgeting and the budgeting projections much more accurate. So, but again, that's not an easy task, especially this time of year. We're still hiring, and again, we have 17 people who are probably accounted for, but needing to move to different cost centers, and everyone is getting additional year of experience and more education, and so it's the personnel movement that I think is really important to capture, and I think there's a lot of activity in the summer, so we're not, it's busy, I think is what I wanted to say. So, Patrick, new teachers, Monday, Tuesday, we have our principals meeting tomorrow, then a full leadership sort of conversation on Thursday. That would include department chairs, team chairs, so we'll probably have 10 people tomorrow, maybe 40 people on Thursday. All new teachers come in on Monday. They report to their buildings. And then Tuesday afternoon, right before lunch, I'll greet everybody. And that's really Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday are the only 3 days that we're together as an entire organization all year. So we do a lot of professional development. We have try to get people to know each other. We try to sort of build on our relationships. So that's next week. Friday's off before Labor Day, and then the students arrive on Tuesday. So so it's it happens quickly.
Thank you. Any comments? Okay. So, Dr. Conti, the ELE coordinator, I believe, is it going to be,
ELL coordinator.
ELL, okay.
As you know, we're evaluated all the time from the Department of Ed in terms of special education and civil rights. ELL is turning into a category that's very similar to special ed. So if you want to sort of parallel the management of ELL, it's really no longer teacher-driven. Patrick's the expert in this area, but the populations of students who we have in ELL are needing to be served by ELL. We're coming to a threshold where the state really requires us to have a coordinator position. So Patrick put together a job description, and Patrick, I just want to, again, maybe what that threshold is, and then what some of the roles and responsibilities are.
Yeah, sure. Just in an attempt to be a little bit proactive, again, the history, as you all know, we've talked about this multiple times, even before Ms. Simon was here, about the growth of our English language department. In particular, I think when I started out in this position, we had one at each elementary school, or actually maybe 3 across the elementary schools, one at Memorial, one at Francis Wyman, and somebody that went back and forth between Fox Hill and Pine Glen. And we had one teacher that went back and forth between the high school and the middle school. So across the district, that's 4 people. And again, just to meet the requirements of the state at this point, we have 2 in our growth, which has been great. Francis Wyman has 2 full-time folks. Pine Glen has 2 full-time folks. Memorial has 2 full-time folks. Fox Hill has 1. The high school this year will have 2. And the middle school has 1. So you can see the, just in staffing, and I was looking at the numbers again, going back to 2013-14, when 2.4% of our kids were categorized as ELL, and were close to 5% coming into this year. And the final numbers remain to be seen, because we will screen our new kindergartners in the fall, so where we fall still remains to be seen. The state recommends that when you hit 200 that you have a full-time coordinator, but seeing what's coming down the road and with our growth, in an attempt to be proactive, I did create a job description. Just again, a couple of variables. One, at the preschool, we're now required to screen our preschoolers. When we screen the fact that they are eligible for English language services, the state doesn't tell you have to do anything. You just know that that they would fall into that category. Again, we'd like to be proactive and maybe start to think about some services there. At the high school last year, I think you heard about it, we had tremendous growth in English language learners, particularly SLIFE students. And if you remember what SLIFE students are, they're the students who have had limited, or they've had interrupted formal education. So they're coming from a very diverse settings, and they need a lot of support when they walk in the door. So that's one of the big reasons why we have 2 staff members at the high school this year who will be working closely with staff. And also to support our regular ed teachers, as you know about the SEI endorsement that all of our staff are required to get now, and having the appropriate amount of staffing and oversight also supports the regular ed classroom teacher, because the state requirements talk about it being everybody's responsibility to educate those students, and we feel the same way. So again, I could go down the list. I think those are a few of the things that I've highlighted. The new accountability system that started from the state last year, again, has a heavy component, how we'll be judged as individual schools and a district is the growth of our English learners. So again, having someone that is really going to be able to give that day-to-day oversight, not that I don't, but a little bit more focused oversight, I think is to our advantage and ultimately to the advantage of the students. So that's kind of the rationale, just off the cuff of why I think this is needed at this point. I also did some background checking with payroll, and I do think we have multiple people in the district who would potentially be interested or have the qualifications to do this job. And I think the top of our teacher's salary scale and the first step in Unit D, there's about just over a $3,000 difference. So it's not talking about creating a whole new position, it's just kind of bridging that gap.
So let me just untangle that just a little bit. So this is not a new position, so we don't feel we're adding a position. The major difference between a Unit A, which is a 187-day contract, and Unit D, which is a 200-day contract, are the 13 days. And then also Unit D, with the right training, can also serve as an evaluator. So I think that's the difference. Oftentimes, when we're in this sort of in-between time, we're paying a Unit A for a lot of extra work during the summer. So they're probably working beyond their 187 days anyway, and if it looks like they're going to be spending sort of regular time at, in addition to the 187 days that are part of Unit A, it would sort of make sense for us to migrate that position if they're going to be doing some evaluation to a Unit D. So again, this isn't a new FTE, it's not a new salary, it's sort of a different classification that has additional days and potentially some administrative responsibilities that we feel would allow us to fulfill the Department of Ed's recommendation that we have an ELL coordinator. We'll post internally. We feel that we have the talent internally to get numerous applicants. We'll put together a panel. And so it would just be essentially moving someone from out of Unit A into Unit D. So.
Mr. Nelson.
Eric, is this going to be similar to like a department head at the high school, where they're going to teach some and also supervise, or they're going to be relieved of their instructional duties and just supervise?
I think the job description might allow for some instruction, but it's primarily going to be working with adults and making sure that we're in compliance. Because, again, ELL is migrating into the, really to look very analogous to special ed. So, for instance, we have to have a CPAC, we have to have a parents organization connected to special ed. We are now required to have an LPAC, which is going to be a English Learner Parent Advisory. So again, as you can see, sort of the evolution of ELL, it's going to evolve in the same way as special ed. Again, I don't want to look too far down the road, but
Could you repeat, so there's a new mandate that school districts need to?
We
have?
actually had our first meeting last
Okay.
spring, so.
Okay, and that's a state mandate? and
Correct.
Obviously, it's a good, I think it's a good, not obviously, I think it's a good thing, I just wanted to, so it is a state mandate, we started it last spring?
Correct.
Great, okay, and I'm sorry to
So just to
interrupt.
follow up on my previous question, Madam Chair, so if this isn't really creating a new position, are we going to have to replace the person that steps into this one?
if we appoint someone out of a school, then we'll have to transfer someone into the school who's delivering direct services, yes. But we feel like we just need some extra days and the opportunity to evaluate, attend meetings, and do some other things that the state's requiring. And again, I don't want to.
So right now, you don't see us adding a new position
You
to
don't see us
replace
adding a
this?
new position. Again, we may, if our student enrollment continues to grow, we may need to add someone in next year's budget to deliver direct services to kids. But I think moving into fiscal '20, we just need essentially the additional days, and we need a change in title to have someone account for as a ELL sort of coordinator. And again, I wouldn't be too surprised if in the not-too-distant future, not necessarily in Burlington, but you'll see districts that have a special education director in a very similar position for ELL students as well. Again, the regulations are getting that specific in terms of mandated services and time.
Yes. Mrs. Monaco?
Eric,
Yes.
not to beat a dead horse, but if you take someone who's providing services and put them in this position, how do you make up for those services?
Well, we have a Unit A person who's doing some curriculum work for us now. who doesn't have a full schedule of direct services. So we would transfer that person into a full day of providing direct services.
What would happen to the curriculum work
Well, part of the job description.
for the person that,
The person that would take this coordinator position would also be responsible for that curriculum work. It's part of the package, yep.
thank you.
Any further questions or comments? Great.
Do you need a vote on this?
Oh, yes, you're right. It is something we need to vote on. So, no further questions or comments, so I guess I need a motion.
Madam Chair, I move that the school committee approve the creation of an ELL coordinator staff position with that individual being a member of Unit D.
Second?
Okay. Any further discussion? Yes, Mr. Ryler. Thank you for,
Just to be clear, it sounds like part of that motion should also be the elimination of the Unit A position then, since it's a transition. It sounds like this new position is doing both the current Unit A position plus this incremental ELL work. So we're just changing from one position to another, not adding a position, is what I heard.
It has a pose.
Well,
do we,
That's true. Again, I'm not sure it has to be part of the motion, but
Oh, yeah,
that's the intention. We're not adding a position.
Right.
So,
I
yeah,
would
I
wanna
mean,
eliminate-
if we eliminate a third grade teacher one year, we don't have to vote on that.
Okay, you only need to vote to add, but not to.
It's my, yeah.
Of
Okay.
course.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions? All right, seeing no further discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, and the chair votes aye, so it's 500. Thank you.
Could I mention one more thing
Okay.
before we move past
All right,
our section? So I just want to make sure I don't forget to, I'm looking it up right here, because I did a post on it on the website. But the high school band is very excited that they're having an open practice this Thursday night at 6:30 on Varsity Field. So you can see the open practice, but at 8 o'clock, they're going to officially go through their new halftime show, which is called To Tell the Truth. And it's based on the movie Catch Me If You Can. And so there was a special on BCAT in the last week on the work they've been doing, and it's really interesting. And I had a chance to talk to some of the staff. And actually, if you've ever seen the movie Catch Me If You Can, I saw it. I don't know all the details. I saw it a few years ago. But that actual main character is a real individual. That was based on a true story. And so Fadine, who works with the marching band, actually sent him an email, and he responded. And he said that he's seen, obviously, the Broadway show based on the movie, but he's never heard of a band doing a halftime show based on that, and he's really intrigued by it. So it was just interesting to get a response from him. And so, again, just something randomly exciting and kind of unique. We do unique things around here. So, again, I recommend if you're around, I believe it's a free show. It's open, according to my information here, and they'd love to have you. And, there's a big group of people. I know we have a good football program, but we also have a great marching band. So I'd take advantage of that chance to just see the marching band that night.
When is it?
It's Thursday night on Varsity Field.
What time?
6:30 is the open rehearsal, so you can see them getting ready, but at 8 o'clock, they're going to go through the show officially. Thank you.
great, thank you for that announcement. All right, so now we'll move on to old business.
Madam Chair, I think we're going to go communication.
Communication, sorry, number 6 is communication. So, school opening, it's coming.
Yeah, I think we already talked a lot about the schedule for school opening, and we'll cover some of the school opening when we talk about summer projects. So I'm going to just turn over to Bob for some summer
Okay.
projects,
All right,
and then we can get to the financial update, and then I'll get to school opening at the end.
okay.
Well, I think first, unofficially, I'd like to request 2 more weeks of summer so we can finish these projects, but, no, we're on good track. I don't have a lot to tell you that we're complete, but I have a lot to tell you that we're close to being complete, and this week and next week is really our crunch time. There's a few projects that were either put on hold unintentionally due to vendor constraints, or just not enough time during the summer, so I just wanted to let you know about those. That's the Francis Wyman Library furniture. We have had plenty of meetings with vendors and the library department, but again, they're not really heard during the summer. So we've been exchanging some emails and so forth, so once they get back into the swing of things, we'll have more of those meetings. Again, the Pine Glen room renovation was put on hold due to the fifth grade classroom opening up. So it is something that we're gonna delay and we will work on this year, but we did need to put a rush on it during the summer, which did work out in our favor. And the BHS flooring, we've got parts of the BHS flooring done. We were looking at two parts, vinyl flooring in the hallways and then rubber flooring for stair treads. Again, just sourcing some of the rubber was a little bit of delay on the color that we wanted. But again, we've had some of it done, some of it not done. And then, of course, the other big one that's not done is the Project Adventure course. Apparently, there was a big supply hold on getting telephone poles, and that affected us. We are looking at the first couple of weeks, like 2 weeks into September, to have that. Ideally, would love to have the course done before school started, but we do think that it should be completed by September, midway through.
And if you, I understand that the training will still be able to happen for our teachers, just at a different course. It would have been ideal to have them trained on our new course, but it's just not ready. So we are able to move forward with the project and the training.
Yep, so again, our teachers will be trained at the Beverly facility. So, for the projects that are underway, the construction at the Francis Wyman bathrooms, we have 4 bathrooms that are out of commission right now. But I did visit them today. We have floors grouted, we have all the wall fixtures hung. Tomorrow, partitions are going in 2 of the bathrooms. On Thursday, 2 more bathrooms are getting partitions. And then the floor fixtures need to go in the toilets and so forth. But again, by next week, those will be good. Fox Hill, I visited today as well. We took 1 classroom, room number 7, and divided it in half to make 2 classrooms out of it. So that wall's complete, the door's complete, it's been inspected by the town. That is a completed project right now. Also, we added 2 additions in the pod rooms. So we have 4 pods at Fox Hill. 2 of them we had already completed pod additions prior to this year, and then 2 we completed this year. I can say those are 99% done, except for windows on the door and doorknobs, which should get installed tomorrow or Thursday. The BHS computer lab was completely redone this year. It is complete. That's upstairs here at the high school. Marshall Simon's cafeteria tables are delivered and installed, but we are waiting on about 20 chair tops, the actual tops themselves, just because they were damaged. But the tables are put aside for now, but we expect those in late this week. Computer science for all. We have ordered furniture for 3 rooms and equipment for the 3 rooms. Those are not expected to be in, but weren't anticipated for us to be in for the start of the year. So we're looking at early September for those as well, too. The existing furniture is staying in the meantime. And again, once the equipment comes in and gets configured, the furniture will be installed after school hours. So the walkie-talkies and blue buttons. This one is a multi-part conversation that we're gonna have to have, again, with administration here. The walkie-talkies are configured, but we have not taken delivery of them yet. Myself and Tom Fournier have met with the walkie-talkie company just to make sure that we have a layout and we have a rollout plan in place. But what we need to do is schedule time with administrators so we can really get that plan in place. And it's not something that we wanna just push on them without, proper training and so forth. So I think in tomorrow's meeting, we'll have an introduction, but we won't introduce them to the actual physical radios, but then in a later meeting, introduce them, and then we'll roll them out at individual school meetings. We have a couple items that are going out to bid. So one is the Francis Wyman fire alarm, one is the Francis Wyman air conditioner, and one is the Marshall Simon boiler. We did receive bids back last week on Wednesday for the Francis Wyman fire alarm. We had 4 bids. We're in the process right now of reviewing those companies that did submit a bid. We do have one person who is a clear low winner as far as the total price. Pretty much all the quotes came within $10,000 of each other, which is really good to know that 4 different random companies. We're pretty competitive. The Francis one, an air conditioner project. We had to push that back a little bit just because of the engineering design changes. And we are expecting bids due in September 5th. So again, we won't meet a summer deadline to have them in, but as part of the bid process, if we do select a vendor after September 5th, they wouldn't do work during school hours. That would all be completed after hours. And we do run a second shift there as well too. So the building technically would be open till 11:30 every night. Same with the Marshall-Simons boiler. Our bids are actually due tomorrow on that. So hopefully at our next meeting, I can give you all an update as to how successful we were with that. Besides that, again, this list is crazy. I have not been doing all the work, but I've been meeting with the staff that has been, and I see them every day, and they're soaking in sweat, they're covered in sawdust everywhere. Same with our custodians. You know, you travel around these buildings, and they used to look like a mess last week. Now those messes are getting smaller because they're putting the classrooms back together and floors are shiny again, so I just want to commend them at the work that they've done this summer. And again, like I said, if they could have 2 more weeks, then I'll take it, but I think we'll be all set for the start of school on that Tuesday coming up next week. Not next week, the following week. So,
Yeah, I was going to ask about the summer custodial. It sounds like they were able to get most everything done, and the additional staff were able to be helpful, so that worked out. How many additional staff did we hire for the summer?
in different phases, we had about 41. Again, just because children have, you know, events that take place during the summer, so we may have them for 4 weeks and then they move on, or vice versa, but approximately 41, yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
Good report.
Ways and Means, Dr. Conti?
Sharon, just for September, I triggered something, the chief contacted me. We want to do our annual fall meeting with the school committee, so see if he's available either in September or maybe the first meeting in October, so we can do that.
Okay.
So we would probably have an executive session first, and we'll see if you're available maybe at 6:30 to committee members, Sharon, like we've done in the past, so we can do that.
Okay. Is there anything else on the school opening that we want to
I'll
comment on?
I'll wrap up at the end. We can just get
Okay.
to a financial
All right,
update.
so our financial update.
And again, so, I'll mention one real sort of positive news, and then we can hand out the revolving report we got this morning, but our new financial analyst started Monday.
Yes.
On the 19th, so that's very good. So she was already participating in meetings and visiting schools with Nicole, so she joins us from the Arlington Public Schools, so she has experience in a school setting, and we're excited to have her, so that's all. So with that, the numbers look good, so I'll say they look good right now. So, Nicole, you got the monthly summary out to everyone, and so you all received that. I hope you received that. We emailed it to you when it was done. And again, our plan is to post the monthly ones on a spot on the website, because we committed to do that, so we'll get them posted as soon as the school committee has a chance to ask questions or discuss things. And again, so, do you want to add anything, or?
I think that covers pretty much everything.
Covers pretty much anything.
Unless anyone has questions on the financials.
And Sharon, do you have copies of the school committee? We handed the school committee the revolving account report. We have some printed copies, is that correct? So if you want to hand them out, that would be great. And then I'm assuming we probably need 2 in the back, or,
Okay, and before we, so the financial report you're talking about is we've completed July, and so we have a financial monthly report, like we've been doing every month for July, and there's not much on it. I mean, there's not a huge amount on it, because we're at the beginning of the year. And so, are there any questions on the July financial report? It's the operating budget, financial year 20 year-to-date. So do people have any questions on that? No.
And again, just remember for some context, we're still hiring, so there's some movement there. And the first payroll just went out, teachers get paid, I think, the 29th, isn't that correct? So the teacher payroll doesn't go out until the 29th for the new fiscal year, so,
The 29th of August?
August.
Okay.
So,
Still in the process of approving that now.
So
Okay.
we're going through sort of that process.
All right.
Obviously, when payrolls start to hit is when we're gonna be spending the significant amount of money. It's also really confusing to people too, because, and I don't wanna, I probably shouldn't even say this, so I won't, but the federal fiscal year doesn't align with the state fiscal year as well, so
Yeah.
there can still be, again, so it's, but we're chugging along, and I think, as you can say, we'll hopefully finish hiring, the payroll will go out, and I think as we have more data, it'll look, the expenditures have been accounted for, but it doesn't make sense to do any projections right now until we start having payroll go out. So I think that's where we're at. We're still committed to that first week of the month, so we're gonna commit to that.
First meeting of the month?
First week of the
Week
month.
of the month, the report will
We
go
are
out.
not
Okay.
counting on school committee meetings. We are gonna do it the
Okay.
first week of the month, get it
All right.
out, and then at our next school committee meeting, discuss it. And then once it's discussed publicly, we will post it publicly. So we won't post it probably ahead of the public conversation, but I think that was fine. And again, the revolving report we got this morning, our intention was to distribute it to the school committee. No one's looked at it, no one's discussed it. So it's bad teaching right now, because you're not gonna pay attention, you're just gonna look at the handout. So I should have saved the handout to the end of the meeting, but that's fine. It'll be on a future agenda item, so you have plenty of time to digest it and ask questions. So it can be on, Sharon, maybe on our next meeting, our next agenda, we'll say the revolving account report will be posted as part of the conversation.
Yes, Mr. Eiler?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Off to a great start here. Thanks for getting that out. Just two questions. One, normally we get the revolving account update with this summer each month. Is that going to be part of this monthly report also? Or, all right, so there just wasn't one this month yet? Or, all right. And the other one was, I think you had mentioned that you thought the FY19 closeout would be ready for this meeting. Is that obviously not ready, or and when do you expect it to be ready?
Again, we met with the town administrator and town assistant administrator today, and Nicole and I went over. We're sort of working on, they have the closest relationship with the town auditor, so they're working with them. They understand that we have an agreed-to procedure sort of yet to complete. Sort of, it may be built just into the fiscal 19 review with some extra attention given to the schools, but John Denuzio was going to work with Nicole and with Powers to complete that work that we agreed to have done. So I don't have it right now, Mr. Eiler.
I'm sorry, I'm not sure if I'm
Can
talking
I-
about the same thing. I'm talking about the FY19 budget, just getting the final statement for that.
Oh, I missed completely what you were
Right,
saying.
no,
So, no,
I wasn't clear.
I don't have that right now. I know we closed out, I know we ended in the black. So we can provide a fiscal 19 summary. I didn't even do that, so I apologize. I maybe misunderstood what you were saying last time. So we can get that to you, the fiscal 19 closeout. I thought you meant the work that we were having done on
No,
fiscal
I
19.
understand that.
So
It's,
I apologize.
Yeah, I think we just want to see that FY19 really came out nice and clean with, everything wonderful.
Okay, so I apologize. We'll work on something for you for fiscal 19.
Wonderful.
Thank you, yeah.
Okay, and that raises, I just want to clarify that we had actually 3 outside projects, I'll call them because I don't want to use any accounting terms. We had 2 agreed-upon procedures with Powers and Sullivan, and we received the report on the agreed-upon procedures for the revolving accounts today. That's what we just gave you. It will be posted on the website. Is that, can I clarify? confirm that with you, Mr. Larkin, that we'll post that on the website?
Oh,
Okay.
oh, yeah,
Okay.
We could discuss it first, and then
Yeah.
I tend to like
Okay.
have
Oh,
an
right.
agenda
So-
item, and we'll talk about it,
And so we'll discuss it
then
at
we'll
our
post.
next, it'll be on the agenda for
Yes.
our next school committee meeting. There was also an agreed-upon procedures that's still in process with Powers and Sullivan, and as Dr. Conti just mentioned, he and Ms. Kasha are working with the town hall side to finalize whatever they do, okay? And then there was a third project, and it was, I think, called a review, I don't know what it was called, but that was with Rosselli and Clark. And that one is the student activity accounts. And those were to be reviewed, and those were not able to be completed over the summer because a lot of the people involved with the student activities accounts are the secretaries in the buildings and all of that. So in September, Rosselli and Clark will be working with our staff to finish that review of the student activity accounts. And just as a reminder, the state requires, I believe it's every 3 years, that we do this kind of a review, but we decided we would do one this first year and get on the schedule earlier because we wanted to be sure, because we knew there had been problems. So those are the 3 outside accounting firm projects that have been out on the table for a very long time, and we've been very, waiting. So the first one is now in our hands. We'll discuss it at our next meeting. The second one is in process with the town hall people, and the third one will hopefully be accomplished in early fall, we hope. So whenever Rosselli and Clark get that back to us.
Yeah, and Mr. Eiler, then in addition to that, we'll create something for 19. So I conflated
Okay.
the end of year with what you were asking, and I apologize.
And we'll continue our monthly reports the first week of the month and discuss them at the first meeting of the month. Okay. So, is there anything else that we need a report on from Ms. Kasha? All right. Any other questions on the financial, or comments on the financial reports? All right.
School opening, I just, again, wanted to say it's first day for all teachers is next Monday. And again, just because of how teachers are, especially in Burlington, is the buildings are already quite full of teachers. Ms. Russo, you're shaking your head, so especially our elementary teachers. The custodians, Bob talks about needing 2 extra weeks. We often have lots of tension between the custodians wanting buildings free of people and the teachers trying to get in and get set up. So it's an interesting time. So again, everyone is working really hard to get ready for kids. Bob, you had a meeting, I know, with the transportation company regarding routes and stops. And so you said that was a positive meeting. Again, I didn't attend that, but you went through every bus route, is that correct?
Yep. So Christine Valcourt is the vice president of Trombley Motors, and she came on site with her laptop and met with myself and Pat Enos. And right on one of our TVs, we went through and every single one of our stops, plus the requests that had come in to date so far. We ended up staying pretty late that night. I tried to get Pat to go home, but it was actually pretty exciting to see it. So Trombley does use a digitized routing software. So once they input all of the students, we get to see them on the map with dots. And then what they do is go into the routes themselves and assign the dots to routes. Now, that doesn't mean the kid has to go on that, but that's how the routes are planned. Also, what Trombley did is look at our existing routes and remap those. So they don't need to reinvent the wheel. We don't need to change bus 10 to bus 11. We're gonna keep it as bus 10. Similar to every year, we still look at the routes, and if kids, either change grades or move in or move out, then we do look at the stops. But it's minimal, a few stops per year that we end up either changing, adding, or deleting. That's what this year looks like. Again, Trombley's just finalizing the routes with the few requests that we did have to make changes to. And we do expect that hopefully tomorrow or Thursday, that the routes will be posted on the website. But the people that have asked me, and again, what I'm saying publicly tonight is that don't expect any tremendous or extravagant changes in the current routes. They're gonna look very, very similar, with maybe just a few added or deleted stops. And again, few is what I'm stressing.
So that was the regular ed one. Mary Hood, our Director of Special Education, had a meeting last night with some CPAC parents. And the bus company came out. Parents wanted to inspect a bus, and they wanted to talk about some of what we discussed at a prior school committee meeting. So, Mary, again, feedback I got was the meeting went very well. Parents got to inspect the bus, look at some of the features that were discussed, and so, again, they did follow through with the meeting with with some of the parents who were concerned about transportation of students with special needs. So again, that occurred last night. And then, again, it's really exciting. I get excited every fall still, so I'm very excited. The energy that comes in with the kids is great, and we're really we're looking forward to it. So there'll always be sort of some adjustments we have to make in the first couple weeks. There'll be hiring we have to do, but the kids show up regardless, and so it's just an exciting time. So we look forward to it. I also want to make sure I'll preemptively thank Chief Kent and the Burlington Police Department. There's always a huge police presence on the first day and beyond of school, just with the additional traffic and some of the delays with parents taking pictures and everything else. So they always just do a phenomenal job helping us get the school year started. So I just want to thank them in advance.
And the bus route you're going to go on the first day is still a secret, right?
Still a secret.
Okay.
We don't know. We don't know what bus I'm going to ride. So that's, or if I'm allowed. I hope, we should have put that in the bus specs, actually. So that was one thing we missed, so.
You can volunteer to drive the bus.
No, that's okay. Not a chance. That's our job. So we're excited about the start. So, so that's all I have for the opening, but we will give you an opening report in September.
Yes, it's a lot of work to get the year started, so thank you to everybody in the district for getting it ready and being ready, and I wish everyone a good year, all the students and all the teachers and all the staff that we have. Thank you. All right, anything else under communication? No. So we'll move on to old business. And the first item is the fuel-efficient vehicle policy, which was discussed at the last meeting in July. Is there more to be said about it?
Yeah, I
Okay.
think Bob got some more information for the
Okay.
committee, so I'll turn it over to Bob.
So again, Ms. Simon, we did discuss this at the July meeting, and there were actually two policies that the town has adopted and asked that the school committee would consider adopting as well. One of them was the no idling policy, and there were questions as to, since the school committee already has one adopted, if we needed to adopt a second one. The town did answer, we do not have to adopt their policy because ours is already in existence, meets their expectations. And again, we have a requirement as well to have one, so we're okay with that. The second one is really just a fuel efficiency policy for new purchase vehicles. Everything that we currently have in the town's fleet, including the school department, would meet the restrictions or guidelines of this policy. And I've been having conversations with John Sanchez, Director of DPW, and Rachel Kaplan, who's the town's DPW operations analyst. And they just wanted to stress a couple of points. For one, that the school buses are excluded from this policy. We don't own our school buses anyways, but in the event that we did, they would be excluded. Again, everything in the town's fleet already meets the criteria in the policy. This is about miles per gallon. The policy is set forth not to require us to purchase electric vehicles. Now, that's an option if we so choose. But really, the intent of the policy is that when we're replacing vehicles, that we buy something that meets our criteria for need at the time, but the most fuel-efficient version. So, for example, if we needed to buy a Camaro, we would possibly consider the 6-cylinder Camaro if it got 2 miles per hour better miles per gallon than the V8 that got worse miles per gallon. So if we were buying a dump truck, they don't really have too many models and engine choices with dump trucks. So again, we're not required to all of a sudden invent an electric car and buy something that doesn't meet our needs. Again, I think the policy, after speaking with both Rachel and John, would benefit us. But again, I would obviously seek the board's opinions and any questions.
Is there a number we're gonna put on this policy, Sharon?
Questions?
No, we usually put crazy numbers on these things.
Letters.
Okay.
We can
Yeah.
probably just put it as a sub-policy to the idling policy, maybe, I would
Yeah.
imagine,
Right.
so we can do that.
Madam Chair, I make a motion that the school committee approve the submitted Burlington fuel-efficient vehicle policy.
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion? I didn't have a chance to discuss it last time, I wasn't here, and I support this. I also feel like it's pretty minimal. We already meet these requirements, these are for us to be eligible for grants at the town level, and it's a good thing that we're doing it, it's a good thing that the Board of Selectmen and the town are looking into this, and I hope this is just a beginning of ways that we can move forward to become more fuel efficient and have a lower carbon footprint, and maybe the town will start looking at having some electric vehicle charging stations, and maybe there could be some at the schools and some at Town Hall and things like that. So I'm hoping that this is just the beginning of movement in that direction.
One other quick comment. I
Yeah.
just want to thank Mr. Kuna for getting that additional information that we had talked about at our last meeting. Very helpful.
All right, seeing no further discussion, all those in favor?
Aye?
Opposed, abstained, and the chair votes aye, so 500, thank you. And the next item is the elementary school building needs discussion.
Again, Madam Chair, I have to take some responsibility for being a bit behind in this area. Patrick and I discussed creating a repository for elementary models that were discussed and some research, so we wouldn't keep having the conversations over and over again. I have not completed that yet. I haven't even got to it yet, honestly, with the opening of school. But one of the scenarios that we've discussed that doesn't have a lot of support is having a single grade level school at one of them. And my suggestion for tonight, maybe, is if we can just talk a little bit about it, and if there's enough people who don't support it, we can just eliminate it completely, and then that would just mean a whole lot less research for me. So, Mrs. Monaco, I know you feel strongly because you've expressed that to me before.
I do.
Which is great, but if you don't mind, maybe
Saying so?
again, and then if we can,
I don't mind at all.
I know. And if we could then, if the rest of the committee agrees, we can eliminate it, then that would save me some time, so,
All right, so why don't I just sum it up by saying that I think what we have is an excellent model currently. The only time that I would consider, in my own personal opinion, separating out a grade would be at the kindergarten level, which we tried that so many years ago and it failed, and that's over. That's done. That's not going to happen. I think it would be a Band-Aid approach. I think it would be an expensive Band-Aid. And I just think the model is all wrong to take one grade like the fifth grade and put them in a separate building. I just don't think it's fair to Burlington to do that. We're not desperate to the point that we have to come up with that kind of a solution. And if we did, I would think it would it only makes sense for it to be a temporary solution. We don't need that. We need a permanent solution. So personally, I would be very happy to take that off the table.
and so just two other points in support of Mrs. Monaco's disagreement, and then I'll maybe say some points in
What,
support.
you're not going to agree with me, right?
Well, no, I'm just giving 2 points
You mean there are
that would
people
support that.
who do agree with me and you're going to perhaps quote them?
No, I'm going to say that if we do have a fifth grade academy, just for lack of a better word, we would need to add a fourth tier of transportation, because we would have to transport all fifth graders from all points of town to one location. So we're a 3-tiered system now, so we'd have to be a 4th-tiered system now, so there'd be an additional cost. I also don't think the Pine Glen facility itself would be ideal for fifth graders, and what I mean is, some of the building could work, but I think it would need renovation, and in my estimation, if we're gonna be a longer-term solution for fifth grade, we would need to build a new gymnasium, that has a very elementary, sort of almost, early childhood-like, gym. It's a wonderful gym, but it's not full-size, and if we have, fifth graders, a building full of 300 fifth graders, they're gonna need some facilities. So it's not necessarily a no-cost option. People may say, boy, you get to keep the school, but if we were to add a full-size gymnasium like at Memorial School and a fourth tier of transportation, I think we're quickly going to have some costs associated with that. So again, do I think single-grade academies can work? Are there communities that have created those solutions? Yes. I don't think they transport in the manner that we transport, and I think the existing facilities were better suited for, were more age-appropriate in their existing state. So again, just the example where I grew up, when I grew up in Arlington, there were 2 junior high schools at the time, East and West. They closed East for a long period of time. They've seen enrollment growth, so they reopened East last year, I think, as a 6th grade academy, and West is becoming 7th, 8th. But remember, they were already transporting all of their middle schoolers to West already, and the East was already a junior high school, so they're just basically reopening a junior high to serve a junior high. So again, I think every context is different, but I'm saying I think curricularly we could certainly make it work, but given the expense to modify the building and then to add a 4th tier of transportation, as much as it pains me to say, I probably agree with Mrs. Monaco that this is not a.
It pains you that much
This
to agree with me?
This would not
crushed.
prove to be a financially viable, again, we could make it work curricularly because we have very talented teachers, and I think we could develop a good program, but I just think it would not be financially viable for the long term unless we were to rebuild Pine Glen significantly and then, again, create a 4th tier of transportation.
So, other thoughts on the idea of a fifth grade academy? Other people? Yes.
I'm also in agreement about pulling out the fifth grade is not in the best interest of Arlington transportation. Also, personally, I don't believe in the isolation of just one grade of students. I think there's a lot of learning when they're with older or younger students, and a lot of cross-learning with the teachers and those students moving up and down. It does work in communities, but for Burlington and just watching our teachers, hearing what's going on at Memorial, I'd like to see some focus more on that WIN program, and that might work very easily, having all fifth grade in one building, but at the same point, I think a lot of what they're doing also enhances the school and the other lower grades that are there too. So, personally, educationally, transportation, that would not be at the top of my list. That would be down at the bottom.
Okay. Yes, Mr. Nelson.
I don't want to date myself, so I'm not going to tell you what year it was, Eric. But way back when I was going through the system, we had 2 fifth grade academies. One at the center school and one at the Union School. The Union School is now the police station.
And look at the result.
Yeah, look what
We don't want to go there.
But that was a crisis at that time. I think eventually the state ordered the town of Burlington to build a high school because the Marshall Simons Middle School was a high school, and it was configured grades 10, 11, and 12. Francis Wyman was 6, 7, 8, and 9 double sessions. And then we had just we had 2 fifth grade academies. So it was done. I don't know if there's an appetite to do it again.
Well, do you think it's a good idea? That's what
You
I'm.
know, as a student, I didn't mind it.
Okay.
I didn't feel isolated. We were just in with all of our peers. I think when you're in the fifth grade, you're probably happy not to be around all the fourth graders, It didn't bother, I don't think it bothered too many people having to do that, so.
Well, in any of these scenarios, honestly, the kids are the easiest to please, so
Yeah.
I never worried about the kids so much, because they're relatively adaptable, and again, I think we would have talented teachers, so again, once the kids were there, if we could create an appropriate space, I think we have talented teachers, we could deliver a quality curriculum. I think it would take a while for us to get there and just be very expensive, so if the idea was it would save us money, I'm not sure that would necessarily, even if it saved us some facilities money, which again, I think we would need to add to the building, I think it would cause some operational expenses for us to quickly surpass any savings on the capital side. And then the Pine Glen School itself is, 1962, so again, we can't say that we wouldn't need to replace some significant features there, and if we were to rebuild a fifth grade academy or have to rebuild sort of almost an entire school, I'm not sure that would be the committee's choice to rebuild just a fifth grade. So again, the point of this conversation is as we build all this information, if no one is going to support this idea, then it honestly would save Patrick and me some time.
Any other comments? I wanted to add that I was open to this idea because, you know, if it could save us money, if it was a solution that could work, if we went and visited some of these, what's the other district that's done it, Needham?
Needham has a sixth grade academy.
Sixth grade academy.
And Arlington has a sixth grade.
Maybe we could visit and see if this is a good, but I don't see any curricular advantage. I don't see any child advantage, even though the kids might be perfectly happy there. And if it's going to end up costing us as much money or not, I really do prefer the elementary model. I know I haven't looked at all the research, but I know some people feel that even a K-8 model is a better model. So keeping kids of different ages together, I think, has a lot of advantages. So if other people are not feeling the need to pursue this anymore, then I think we can either remove it from our list or maybe even just put it at the bottom of the list, because if other information came up later, then we wanted to bring it back, we could certainly do that. But I'm comfortable removing this option as one of our options, and then we have fewer options to research and figure out what we want to do with. So did the Ways and Means have any comments on the fifth grade academy? No. Or anyone else? So that's good. I feel like we accomplished something tonight about this. And, you know, at our next meeting, we'll have another conversation about elementary buildings. And,
Yeah, and I'll catch up with some of my
and by
work.
then, maybe
so
we'll have a
you-
repository
yeah.
to start using to look at the different advantages and disadvantages. So
Yep.
thank you for everybody for your input, because I think that was really productive.
Excellent.
All right. And now on the policy manual review.
Again, I'm not even sure I want to weigh into this, but the committee has had lots of conversations about reviewing policy. The chair and I had a conversation about a section to start. We included Sharon in that conversation. And we came up with Section E. High school, I'm
Which
sorry.
is called support services.
Student handbook,
Okay.
just so I don't forget. These are the policies that exist in the Massachusetts Association of School Committee Policy Manual. That certainly doesn't mean that, and we have 3 of them, that doesn't mean that we are lacking or we need to have every single one. And I would say because many of these things are covered in our student handbooks. So even if you were to create policy, for instance, on vandalism, I'm assuming your policy is going to say we don't want it in some way. I wouldn't want the policy to be so specific that it would either conflict with an existing student handbook or limit a principal's ability to sort of manage the student discipline that comes with it. So I think that's honestly the conversation moving forward with the school committee would be, we can certainly provide you with the boilerplate that the Mass Association provides in each of these areas. If you believe it's going to add value, that would be great. And then we can also check then through Sharon or even through some of us or through the principals, just to make sure it doesn't conflict with the student handbooks that we have that are in place. And again, Ms. Simon, you mentioned, for instance, like school bus safety. If some of the handbooks say that the responsibility for student behavior on the bus falls on the parents, and another student handbook says the school bus stop and school bus behavior is the same as school behavior, which is sort of what we believe. We would just want to make sure that we're giving all the same information. So anyway, here's Section E of the Mass Association of School Committees. Sharon, you have the dates of the 3 policies that we have. They're all in this century, which I'm not sure we need to reaffirm. We need to reaffirm any of them. If one of them was from, 1983, I'd say it makes sense to relook at it and to maybe reaffirm it at a more modern date. But 2012, 10, and 18 are all sort of around, and so there you have it.
So I'd like to suggest, and Mrs. Monaco and I have volunteered to be a subcommittee around this, and that maybe that you and I, Mrs. Monaco, could look at the current plans we have that are part of this Section E, which are the 3 that Dr. Conti just mentioned, and look through. I also wouldn't want to necessarily get into the nitty-gritty, but we might want to have a school committee policy around, like student conduct on school buses, that would then help all of our individual student handbooks from each building become more same. There's another word for that, but you got it for me? Okay, go ahead.
I mean, sorry.
I'm sorry, so I'd like to, do a little review, and then we would bring back to the committee if there was anything we felt would be a valuable thing to have. And I also see under this section is things like pest management policy. I believe we have one, but it may be in a different section. Buildings and grounds management, things like that. We might end up finding that we have some, but they're in a different category. So, no, I thought we had a pest management policy. But it seems to me I know we've talked about wanting to have one. So yes, Mr. Larkin.
I apologize for interrupting. I just wanted to say, I know one of the things like we've talked about amongst the principals is just kind of having one common, especially for the elementary schools, common handbook of policies, and to try to do away with some of those inconsistencies that you may be seeing. They can, obviously, they're still going to have information that's school-specific, like staff and arrival and maybe the times and so forth. But as far as policies that they have, we are trying to unify those. So any input you have on anything you see would definitely be helpful in moving that along.
Yes, Mrs. Monaco?
I think to have common language about school bus safety, et cetera, in the elementary handbooks, and then whatever's appropriate for the middle school and high school. And if we actually want a policy, we could just take the wording from each of the 3 handbooks, the 3 different levels. But there are some things on here that I'm thinking back to Ed Fogelberg back in the day, who always said, and I kind of believe him, that you really don't have to have a policy about everything, So I'm sure that there are rules and regulations about how you do pest control, if you do pest control, when you do pest control, et cetera. I'm just not sure we actually need a school committee policy on it. But, if there's a plan on when you do it, how you do it, why you do it, how you hire someone, et cetera, and you want to make it a policy, we could, but I just think we don't really need all of these.
I agree. I don't feel like we're going to decide we need them all. But I would see this as sort of a starting place for you and I to look through, and then if there are ones that we would like to recommend, we could then propose it to the full committee to look at and decide as a committee. Does that make sense to you as a process?
Yeah, that's fine. I guess my thoughts originally were that we would look at a section of existing policies and see if any of those policies needed to be updated or changed.
And again, so I would agree that's what you all decided. So if you can start with Section E, we have 3 existing policies in Section E. So I would start with emergency plans, motor vehicle idling, which you have just read, and meal charge policy, and start with those 3 existing in Section E. Then you can see if you want to add any. We'll provide you with the boilerplate language. But I honestly think it's just as important if you say publicly that you don't want to add them, because then if someone says, why don't you have a pest control policy, we can say, school committee basically didn't want one, which is an active decision, and that we're managing that through the
Buildings and
building and
grounds.
grounds.
Craig put them
This part,
for each school.
Excellent. So,
this process, if we do it 3 policies at a time, is going to take approximately 150 years.
Right.
Gotta
But
start somewhere.
we'll start, I mean, I think people agreed it was important for us to look at some, and this is 3, we might be able to do it in one shot.
Yeah, I mean, what we ought to do really is have more at a time.
Well, but
if
I
we're
would
gonna
like,
fly through it.
you don't need to, but I would like to look through some of these other categories
Yeah,
to
that's
see
fine.
if, and then we can say that, we do want to have something on student conduct on school buses, but the rest of them we don't want to have. And then we're done with Section E. And there may be
How
other
many
sections.
sections are there, Sharon?
How many letters?
10, something?
It's about 12,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and some of them are like huge, right?
Right, and so.
Okay, that's good. However you want to do
we'll
it's fine
see.
with me.
Yeah, Mr. Murphy?
I would just, if we gotta start somewhere, if the intent was that Ms. Monaco would fall within the pest control management policy, then I would be in favor of implementing that.
Bam! What was
Okay.
that?
Never mind.
Why are they always picking on me?
All right. So, is there anything else for tonight then? And Mrs. Monaco and I will get back to you on this set. Okay? If there's a particular one, did you folks, yeah, you got this. If there's one on this list that doesn't have a date on it, Mr. Murphy and Mr. Nelson and Ms. Musso, that you think we might want to look at, consider adding, please feel free to let us know. Okay? All right. All right.
okay, Madam Chair, moving along.
Yep.
It's at 9 o'clock, so I just want to say, under old business, in your packets, more informational, because we had discussed this publicly at the prior meeting. We did put placeholder warrant language in on the deadline, and again, I think town meeting was part of that, so we have a warrant for September town meeting to see if the town will vote to amend Article 3 of the May 15th, 2019 annual town meeting, Fund 2020 operating budget by reducing the amount appropriated in line 58, which is total local education, by a sum of money or to act in any other manner in relation thereto. And we've identified sort of a placeholder dollar amount. And again, we'll be double checking and triple checking that. And again, that number can change, but we did make the warrant article deadline. And again, we are planning on asking town meeting to reduce our appropriation by the amount of the new transportation contract. So I'm saying that's what you voted to support, and I just wanted to provide evidence that we did meet the deadline and we did follow through. So that was it. We did some research. We did not need 2 for accommodated and operating. You said we can just do the 1. Both of the special ed transportation and the regular ed transportation will be reflected in that number. So that's sort of the research that was done. So that's sort of, I completed my homework.
Okay. Any other comments or questions on that? Okay.
Okay, out-of-state student travel, Madam Chair. BHS Principal Sullivan is requesting out-of-state travel approval for the high school marching band and chaperones to travel to Hampton Beach, New Hampshire on the last day of band camp, August 23rd. Transportation will be provided by Trombley Motor Coach. Fiscal implication is none. The music department will pay for the transportation. It's recommended school committee approve out-of-state travel to Hampton Beach, New Hampshire for the marching band and chaperones on August 23rd.
So moved.
Second.
All right, I think this is a fabulous trip, and if there's no further discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstain, and the chair votes aye. That's 500. Thank you.
The next out-of-state travel we're going to do as a group, but we're going to do it a little bit differently than we've done it in the past, and it's going to make, it's going to sound a little bit self-important, so I apologize for that in advance. I'm serving on some different committees, or I've been asked to participate in some conversations that occur outside of the state. So the first one, for instance, is there's a computer science education conference. The national conference is in Las Vegas, Nevada in September, and that's about expanding computer science education across the country. There's a team from Massachusetts that's going through the Department of Ed that's funded by code.org. So again, they've invited me to participate on the state team. I think there's lots of local benefit for me to participate in this conversation, since that's what we're doing already. So again, I'm asking the school committee permission for out-of-state travel to Las Vegas, Nevada on September 11th and 12th for the Computer Science Education Conference. And you have the backup material, and all the expenses will be paid for by code.org. In speaking with Darren and getting sort of an opinion from Darren, because the support is over $50, what I'm also asking the school committee to do is approve of this, and I have some additional paperwork that needs to be signed, that this is a disclosure of a non-elected public employee, that's me, of travel expenses serving a legitimate public purpose, as required by the ethics law. So it's, again, if you're approving this trip, you're just not approving me going, you're acknowledging that there's an outside agency supporting my travel, and it's over the $50 that seems to be the minimum in so doing that. So I'm not saying I'm in demand, but in this particular topic, they've asked me to participate, and they're paying my fare, and I don't like being out of the district, but I feel that there would be a value in so going, so I'd ask for your approval. And again, if approved, then I'll have the chair sign the document, and then Sharon, you'll keep record of the vote and the acknowledgement that this has a legitimate public purpose.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any discussion?
I
Mr.
just,
Murphy?
I think the motion,
I think we should clarify the motion,
Yeah.
just
Okay.
in case somebody checks on it.
Go ahead.
I would,
you want to do it?
So
you
Mrs.
got
Russo made a motion, are you gonna? Have
Mrs.
we-
Monaco did.
Mr. Monaco
I'm
made the
sorry, you
motion.
moved.
Yeah, Steve can read it or say
Yeah, I
it.
just want to get the necessary
The
language in
wording?
there. according-
Okay,
We
thank
gotta,
you.
we
I'll
gotta,
take a stab at it.
we
if
gotta
you
prove
want.
an exemption and
Yeah.
find there's a legitimate public purpose.
So I guess we're going to, Madam Chair, I make a motion that the school committee approve the organization code.org to pay for Dr. Conti's expenses at this out-of-state conference in Las Vegas, Nevada, recognizing that it's an expense that exceeds the sum of $50, and also recognizing that the committee has determined that it serves a legitimate public purpose, and that we approve his request for the out-of-state travel to Las Vegas on September 11th through the
Second.
12th.
Okay, and Mrs. Monaco, you withdrew your
Yeah, that's fine.
motion?
Yep.
Okay, and was that a second? I'm sorry.
Second, yes.
Second, okay. Any discussion? All right, seeing none other, I would like to say, I think it's a good idea. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? The chair votes aye, 500. Thank you.
Okay, so the next one, and Mr. Nelson, there might be language here that is right in the form that I should have handed you, and I'm sorry I did not. The next one is November 12th and 13th to Washington DC, and that is associated with the AASA, the National Superintendent's Association, and because of the recognition of being Superintendent of the Year, they have a meeting for Superintendents of the Year in DC, where we discuss national education policy, and we meet with our elected officials, and they put us up for 2 nights. I'll get there myself, I'll drive, but they put us up. So again, this is, I'm requesting permission to attend, go to Washington DC, November 12th and 13th. Mrs. Russo, if, maybe if you want to read that. Acceptance of the reimbursement, waiver, or payment of travel expenses will serve a legitimate public purpose, i.e., it will promote the interests of the Commonwealth, a county, or a municipality, and such public purpose outweighs any special non-work related benefit to the employee or the person providing the reimbursement, waiver, or payment.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All right, any discussion?
Got that all, Sharon?
Again? Again, it sounds like a good idea, and all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, chair votes aye, that's 500.
And I'm sorry, the last one, we're trying to knock some of these out, and I apologize, but Darren, we're trying to do this all at once. There's a Educational Research Development Institute. This is an institute that you have to get invited to. There are superintendents, again, from all over the country. We work with educational companies, materials, products, technology, and we sort of explain what we're looking for. It's a future-oriented, research-based conversation where we might meet with someone from Discovery Ed to talk about their product and say where it's meeting our needs, where it's failing our needs in terms of serving children. I think it's a good thing to be invited to these things, and I sit on other panels with superintendents from, again, all over the country, and I try to shape the projects and research that would benefit Burlington students ultimately. I'm not sure there's an instant sort of gratification there, but I feel we're having an impact. So again, this happens to be in February 5th through 8th in Austin, Texas. And again, they cover, there's no expense to the district, but because there's no expense to the district, again, I would ask that Mrs. Russo, again, I can read it again, sorry. Upon consideration of the facts disclosed by the employee above, that's me, I find that acceptance of the reimbursement, waiver, or payment of travel expenses will serve a legitimate public purpose, i.e., it will promote the interests of the Commonwealth, a county, or a municipality, and such public purpose outweighs any special non-work related benefit to the employee or the person providing the reimbursement, waiver, or payment.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any further
Yes, well, I'm sorry, one more
Okay.
thing that's associated with this, and I don't think I will need this, but just in case. Each of these panels is 3 hours, and because they want your expertise, sometimes there's an honorarium that's associated with it.
Do we need a separate motion for that?
Yes, we do, so I'm
Okay.
sorry, so do.
So any further discussion on the travel arrangements to this conference? All those in favor? Opposed, abstained, chair votes aye, that's 500,
And again, I'm disclosing to the committee that I've been invited to participate in a legitimate speaking engagement, and again, may accept an honorarium. The honorarium is $500 per session. So Darren said I need to submit a disclosure by public employee of an honorarium related to a legitimate speaking engagement, which would be this research conference that I'll sign. Sharon will have that on record, and in speaking with the organization, they're not sure they're gonna have honorariums or make a donation to a local scholarship or charity, so I don't know. So I'm just doing this as a cautionary notification, I think. This doesn't even say you need to sign it or vote, so again, I'm just notifying you, I may do that. And just, again, just to cover all my bases, I'm gonna take vacation days for this time anyway, so I hope with the disclosure, with public notification and the right forms and me being on vacation, I'm hoping I'm covering everything. So thank you all for that, and I apologize, it's gonna take a little longer to do this.
Thank you for your thoroughness, appreciate it. Yes, Mr. Murphy?
Question, I guess, moving forward, do we have to go, I mean, every now and then, we'll have a teacher or a staff member going to some sort of a conference someplace that they pay part of the, whether the transportation or the fee or whatever. Do we have to, or should we be doing this every time an employee comes before us for out-of-state travel when there's some sort of whether it's a stipend being paid or expenses being covered?
I don't think so, in my speaking with Darren. So, for instance, the National Superintendent's Conference is part of my contract, and the district pays for it. So, there's no, it's in my contract, so that there's no possible corruption that I think would go with that. So I don't think we have to go through all the ethics. You would just approve the out-of-state travel.
Right.
If Patrick's traveling and it's part of the curriculum budget, I think he would just go. If Patrick is invited to speak at a technology conference, and they say, we'll pay your airfare and put you up, then I think he would need to fill this out again. And I think the conversation with the committee is, I think it reflects well in the district when Patrick is representing Burlington and speaking at these events.
I agree. I don't think there's any dispute over that. I just want to make sure we're dotting the i's going forward.
So I would say the difference is if the district is paying for it, then you all are approving that through the budgetary process and through the warrant. If someone else is paying for it, they just want to make sure there's not a quid pro quo or that you're not aware that someone else is paying for it.
So anytime we see something come before us that somebody's expenses are partially covered, we should have that language added to the.
Because sometimes there are teachers who have their expenses covered as well.
Yeah, I think
By
Sean
an outside-
Musselman is serving
Yes.
as the coordinator for the National Science. Again, it's an honor, it's great for the district, but I think we just need to recognize that someone else is
So
paying the
if we
bill.
could just memorialize that language and just have it
Yeah.
attached to motions from going forward for
That'd be
those
great.
type of situations.
Perfect, and then Sharon, we'll have the paperwork filled out. Maybe we'll include them in the packet, maybe not, but we'll have record of them there. So is that clear as mud to Ways and Means? You're all sort of set. I'm trying to cover everything, and
Okay, thank you. And the last listed agenda item,
just two things before we get to
okay.
superintendent evaluation, I apologize, is, Sharon, did we send out the high school student handbook to school committee? Mark gave it to us, again, that's my fault. I did get an email from Mark saying that the, two things. He said the 2019-2020 Burlington High School Student Handbook can be found here, so we'll forward that to the school committee. It adheres to the district policies that were given last year. For the upcoming year, there are no substantive changes. The only updates are with the items such as rotation, schedules, dates, phone numbers, et cetera, if you need anything else. May I just ask for a sort of a conditional approval until you have a chance to review it and we can vote again in September? I just want to have a conditionally approved student handbook for the start of the year. Again, Mark is saying the language is all the same. If we find that there's any significant changes, we'll address that. But if possible, and again, I apologize I didn't get this to you sooner.
so do we need a motion for a vote?
I'm not sure how that would work.
I
Mr.
guess we could make a motion to approve waive the first reading and approve the student handbook, subject to any
Subject to.
revisions the committee might want to make at its next meeting.
Okay.
Okay.
Is that all right? Thank
Do we
you.
have a second?
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed, abstained, the chair votes aye.
And then the last thing I just wanted to confirm is Sean Hart, the athletic director, reminded all coaches at his meeting yesterday, and Principal Sullivan was there about the heat policy, and the band has also been reminded as well.
Right.
So both those conversations have been taking place. So I know that was a question. I'm sorry, Madam
Thank
Chair,
you.
then we can get to the
That's good.
superintendent evaluation rubric pilot.
Okay.
Sharon, this is your agenda item. The Department of Ed has released a new superintendent evaluation rubric. It's supposed to be simpler in terms of, not in terms of expectation, but in terms of execution. And MASC, the Massachusetts Association of School Committees, are looking for guinea pig, no, I'm sorry, looking for pilots to go through this process. I think, Sharon, we signed that we would, again, we may be interested, but we would discuss it with the committee. Does the committee have to request to be part of the pilot?
I think that this committee has to approve whether you want to participate. Dr. Conti would like to participate, so it will be up to you. It is, instead of having like 30 components, it will only have 15.
So moved.
Second.
So we'll get more information. We'll probably have Darren out to do a training again, because that's just something that he offers and he'll do. We're all curious, my colleagues are all curious as what this is eventually going to look like, but we will see. So it's an exciting time in the superintendent world.
I would typically want to look at it before I said, yes, we wanted to or didn't, but if you're wanted to try it, I'm fine with it too. So any other further discussion on this?
No.
No? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Chair votes aye. That's 5-0. And I don't think there's anyone here for public participation.
I have
and
one
oh.
thing to bring up.
Okay, something else.
Yeah, I just sort of thought of it. Last fall, we went on a tour, some of us at the Pine Glen to see the special ed program that's over there. And I had a conversation with Paul Sagarino, I don't know, quite a while ago, early in the summer. And in the course of the conversation, he indicated that he'd like to see the program. And I got an email from Terry today saying she was trying to set it up. So I just wanted to kind of bring it up again, that once that is set up, anyone from the town side, including Paul or anyone else, anybody on Ways and Means, I know Mr. Ryler would love to visit it again. Right, John? It's kind of a fun field trip to go and see the program and the kids, because they're such little sweet kids. But anyway, that will get set up maybe for late September. And anyone from if anyone's watching from the town side of government that wants to see the program, we'd like to have you.
Yeah, and the only caveat, Mrs. Monaco, is if we have 50 people interested, I'll probably make multiple days.
Yes.
But we'll make it as manageable.
I don't
and
think that's going to happen.
I don't think it's going to happen either, but I'm just saying, everyone's welcome, but I just will try to manage minimize the disruption as much as
Well, as
possible.
long as we have Mr. Sagarino there, that's,
Yeah, and-
someone, others that he may
Yes.
feel he wants to see the program.
And it might just be easiest initially for Paul and I just take a ride over and sort of then set up the larger
Oh,
meeting.
that's no
So
fun.
I know. So we'll work it out. Terry's working on it, so I think it'll get done.
I want to go.
I know. So it'll get done. Yes, ma'am.
Are there any other items or comments for tonight? I think we have a need for executive session.
A brief executive
A
session.
brief executive session
Give you
Uh,
5 minutes.
to discuss contract negotiations and approval of minutes. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
The school committee will only return to public session for the purpose of adjournment. We have to discuss these matters in executive session because to discuss them publicly would jeopardize the position of the body. So I need a motion.
So moved.
Okay.
To enter executive session.
Mrs. Russo?
Aye.
Mr. Nelson?
Aye.
Mrs. Monaco?
Aye.
Mr. Murphy?
Aye.
The chair votes aye. We're in executive session.